Hello and welcome to the Groupthink Podcast. I am very sleepy, and joining us today is author, and I don't know what else to describe her as, C.S. Johnson.
Hi everyone, thank you.
Explain yourself, please. I don't know how to do it.
Okay, so I tell people I'm the CEO of my own media empire. So if that doesn't sound pompous enough, I don't know what will. But no, I'm a writer, and I'm a mother, and explaining myself is something I like to say for the feds. So
I'm sure that happens often. So tell us a little about what you've written, for anyone who isn't aware of your work.
All right, so I'm C.S. Johnson, and I write a lot of speculative fiction, a lot of genre hopping stuff. I've written in fantasy, science fiction, historical fiction, contemporary stuff, and just all over the place. I like to think of myself as a one-woman Netflix for books, and I like to just keep it coming. And yes, some of it is worse than others. Some of it you'll hate worse than others, but at least with me, you know that you're getting something that's at least gonna force you to think. And I tell people my books make you they're supposed to make you laugh, make you think, and then make you better. So
well, that's the aim. I mean, I remember the first time I looked at your Amazon list, and yeah, a lot of the covers had the stereotypical like buff dude on the front of it. Like I have this weird association with that because I go to a elderly person restaurant near me, and there's a little free book pile, and there's some little old lady who just gives away all of her raunchy romance novels in that pile. And then you just recently published that book, Good Writing is Like Good Sex, and I'm just like, wait a minute, buff guys, overly erotic it's porn, all of it's porn. Okay.
Well, unfortunately, in our current cultural climate, sex sells. I understand why you'd have this raunchy grandma person coming to your place and giving away her books.
What's all that dime store trash is like it's like sexy romance novel with the pirate, and it's like, okay, but at least it's free for whoever wants it.
Well, I will say, like, I'm a non-gratuitous writer, so even good writing is like good sex is not graphic at all. So it's just a lot of innuendos. And, getting down to business and writing a book. So,
Innuendo is good writing. Like, graphic stuff is not, so...
My mother was really the one who really installed the love of reading in me, and I was allowed to read, like, literally whatever I wanted. And I remember, like, even in high school, we had, Test of the D'Urbervilles and 1984, and we had to talk about sex a lot. So, yes, I can understand where, like, the classic leave-off is just a good balance to strike, I think, for today. You don't actually have anything described, but it's like, oh, we know what they're doing. And for me as a writer, personally, it's like imaginary children, and it's like I don't really want to think about my imaginary children actually doing anything specific.
Gosh.
Right. Well.
And there's also the Christian factor, so...
Oh, yes, guilty. I am a Christian, so I am just a little bit of a prude. I actually say that in my book. I said, I'm a prude, and my last boyfriend will be the first one to tell you, so...
I mean, I did just write an article defending Game of Thrones on Geeks Under Grace, so I mean, I'm not really a good source of moral fortitude on that front. So,
I'll talk about it, and I promised myself a long time ago that I would talk about God in the same way that I would talk about anything from politics to blowjobs to bikini lines. So I mean, like, if you, like, I know people who talk about God in this, like, sort of, like, fantastical sort of voice, and, I can appreciate it on some level. There's that level of wonderment, that sort of rush of ecstasy of meaning, and, that existential love that just gives such an added layer to your life. But then would like go and talk about football, and it would be like this totally different voice, and I would just be like, it's a different kind of worship, honestly.
What kind of prude are you?
I'm a very observant one. Very matter of fact, to the point. You know, I got through my postpartum depression, honestly, by making a lot of sarcastic remarks. So.
I can kind of imagine you carrying a switch around. I don't know why. Just.
Oh, well, yes, well, if you can't tell from just me in general, I like multifaceted. Like, you know, Robert McKee has on his book and story, he talks about how people are walking contradictions of themselves. And I like to think that writers are all just trying to make sense of the contradiction within us.
Yeah, that's true. So I wanted to talk to you specifically about your writing career, however you want to define that, and what does it take to, well, how do you consider yourself? Do you consider yourself successful for one, and how do you think you can break into that sort of thing?
All right. Well, I actually talk about this in my book. I really like my book.
Buy my book. Buy my book.
Buy book and read it. Yeah. I actually talk about this a little bit. So there's a difference between like success and mastery when it comes to writing. And I think for someone like me, I started writing when I really love words. So I really love words. My favorite word is esoteric, and it's been my favorite word ever since I heard it. And if that doesn't tell you like everything you need to know about me right there, I don't know what will. But I started writing when I was really young, and I really liked it. I thought I was always very shy, and I didn't want to talk, but I was also very smart. So a lot of people thought I was really snobby and judgmental. And, you know, being a prude, you get that too. So, but so I started writing, and then after I graduated high school, I started writing books just because I wanted to try to find a publisher. And this was back in, you know, the early 2000s. So it's a very different climb than it is today. You know, pretty much anybody can be a writer today, and you don't even have to be very good on the like proficient mastery level to be successful. So in terms of like my career, I started mostly because I wanted to work out the remainder of my teenage angst. I've told more than one person that writing is very cheap therapy. So you got your cat and your keyboard to listen to all your problems.
Anyone listening to this will not understand that there is a tabby cat that's just walking in and out of the frame on her Skype right now. So.
Well, sorry, this is Jasper. This is my new cat.
Oh, he's wonderful.
Oh, well, he hides that part very well.
Anyone who's seen any of my social media feeds can tell that I'm like a cat aficionado, even though I don't have any. So I'm just sitting here like,
I think people who like animals are just better people because they become more human, I think, if you interact with things that are not human, just by virtue of being like aware that there's a distinctness between you and the animals.
So you're saying if I start interacting with my pet rock, I'll start being better as a human being.
Yes, but what kind of human being might be the more terrifying answer to ask on that, right?
More or less.
Yeah. But
so where are we at when you in your writing speech?
Yeah, my writing speech. So if you want to be a successful writer, just write. Starting is probably the worst part. You know, plan out your book if you want, or you can just sit down and stare at a computer until it starts coming out. But a lot of it depends on what you want out of it. I wanted to get rid of my angst, and as I grew up, it's like, oh, now I should, like, you know, make money off of this, right? So there's kind of a different approach to just some things now that I've been doing it for so long. So you know, my first book, if you read Slumbering, it's very sarcastic and very dry and very satirical. And it was so much so I get a lot of negative reviews on it. And they're like, I hate this character. And I'm like, well, you're supposed to hate this character. It's like, oh, we don't want that. Now it's like, oh, I have to make you feel sorry for my character somewhat. Or I have to make them sexy in a different way, and that's like this troubled person stuck in these circumstances. I mean, I think pity is kind of a cop-out when it comes to writing good characters. You know, it's like pity is such a one-way emotion, but it's the easiest one to be one way. You know, like I'm supposed to feel sorry for all these people on Twitter who, you know, like me, complain about everything.
Twitter is not good therapy as opposed to writing, so.
Oh, well. I think you can't take all of it too seriously. I think that there's a danger in that. I feel like I've called Twitter the perpetual 2 minutes of hate before.
That's painfully accurate.
Yeah, so what I mean, people say a lot of weird, awful, unself-aware, hypocritical things when they're on Twitter, and it's I mean, it's pretty much one loud, angry rage pit. You know, I mean, like, there are definitely good people to follow and fun people to follow, such as yourself, you know.
Like Faith Moore.
Yes. Because Faith and I have a lot of fun on Twitter.
I can tell, you guys are always going at each other.
Oh yeah, I've told people that she's the Tolkien to my Lewis, so... The only thing is I don't sit back here and smoke pipe or drink whiskey.
As far as we know.
We'll keep that way too. Oh well. So yes, there are definitely good people on Twitter, and it's fun to interact on Twitter. Because I mean, the nice thing about being angry in the 2 minutes page is you do really show like who you are on some authentic level at certain points, which just kind of tends to be the worst parts of you. So the people that you do meet on Twitter and the people that you like on Twitter can actually be really good friends with you, and you get along really well just because you're used to. I think if you met in person, it'd be a lot different.
Oh, it'd be completely different. That actually, normal social etiquette would actually start kicking in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The fact that I could punch you in the face would kick in.
Yeah.
There's no immediate consequences to Twitter. It's just throwing things out into the void. But it's not a void. Everyone's listening.
It is definitely more of an inner reality sort of thing. Like, they talk about augmented reality in the virtual video game kind of cycles and stuff. And it's like, it's already here. I mean, that's what kind of imagination is anyway. I mean, like, there are 8 steps to communication, and like when you add Twitter to it, it's just like it's got like 80 more attached to it. So it is it already is a better, it's a bigger, kind of more terrifying minefield to step into. So.
Gosh, I like the cat's just kind of pawing at you off screen.
Well, he wants attention.
Oh.
We all want attention, so this is my furry Twitter.
My heart.
Yep.
So, tell me a little about how do you self-publish, or do you go through any sort of publisher?
I'm actually a hybrid publisher, so I'm traditionally published as well as self-publishing. They both have their ups and downs. I really like working with like a bigger system, but when you work with people, you know, you have the I call it like the lines of social communication. You have to figure out what your role is and what to do, and nobody explicitly tells you these things very often. So it's like, oh, you need to do this, or you need to do this. And it's people tell me this, I'm like, really? I have to do that? And they're like, yes, you do. You really, really do. I'm like shocked. And when it comes to self-publishing, you're all by yourself, and you can have a lot of, there's a lot more room for trial and error, but you end up finding error a lot more, if that makes sense.
Yeah, the immediate problem with self-publishing always seemed to me that there's the only apparatus of success is however much attention you can personally draw to your work. So if you aren't already Twitter famous and you self-publish, you're going to sell approximately 5 copies of your book. But...
I think the average for most self-publishers, the average for like all 87 million on Amazon right now is about 100 books. So most self-publishers get about 100 books, and then you start to see like fade out.
I mean, that's more than I thought, but that's not impressive.
Yeah.
We're not reaching like trying to think of a good, like, really successful recent book. I don't know. We're not reaching, like, super success levels here. This is not starting your writing career off on a good start, other than just saying, I have a book.
Well, and that's kind of the thing. Like, when people ask me what I'm like, I tell people that I'm kind of like a foundationalist. I think that you have to reaffirm the foundation. So it's like so one book is like your cornerstone, you know, and that's kind of like what you need to build on your legacy with. When I talk about my own media empire, so like it's in addition to the books, right now I have audiobooks, I have some comics, I have more books coming out. I've written some of my work into TV scripts that actually are being looked at by producers and stuff, and it's just, I mean, like, that's kind of like, the book is your cornerstone to start off. You want it to be fun, you want it to be, well, I want it to be fun, I want it to be thought-provoking, I want it to, I tell people that I don't like candy bar books, which are just like these, you know, kind of like you read them and you feel brain dead afterwards.
Can you give us an example, just for fun?
Well, probably your raunchy grandmother at the cafe.
I nearly spit up the coffee.
No, one thing I try really hard not to do is, like, I don't like talking bad about other people's work, because I do know that there are plenty of people that enjoy the fluffy, kind of thoughtless sort of enjoyment that you get out of it. I mean, it's like that with movies, you know. There's some movies that are just beautiful, but they mean nothing. So
Name names.
Well, I actually said that about Captain Marvel. I said it was very entertaining, but it wasn't elevating at all. So
that's fair. I mean, you do have the appropriate matching cat, so.
Yeah. Jasper's very Florkin-esque.
That's unsettling when in context, but. Next time I see you, you're gonna have an eye patch.
Oh gosh. Well, that's part of the reason I like wearing the glasses, actually.
Moderate defense.
Yeah. Yep. Nick Fury should have just stuck to keeping the sunglasses on after he got kicked out of MIB, you know?
I didn't go back and watch Winter Soldier right after that, but that colors so much of his dialogue in Winter Soldier in such a fascinating way. Last time I trusted someone, I lost an eye. I guess I trusted the cat.
Oh, well, I think Nick Fury is one of those, you can make him more complicated than what you see, definitely. So I think he lies a lot just to be funny.
I think Captain Marvel makes him less complicated.
You do have a point there, yeah. So, oh gosh, what was I saying about stuff? Oh, okay, so yes. So your book is your foundation, you want to lay the foundation, you want to make it good and strong and decent, and then you want to build up from that. So, and then like the kind of like the top of the pyramid, that should be like your goal as a writer. What is at the top of your pyramid? You know, and as a self-published hybrid author, my goal right now is just to keep. I have a lot of support in terms of just my husband and my kids are. I mean, I complain about them a lot, but they're also like my rock. You know, they let me write, and I really do like writing for them. I like writing stories that I know they'll read one day, and I tell that's the other reason that I don't write like gratuitous fiction is because it's like I don't want any really awkward questions coming from my kids about certain things. I mean, I'm sure I'll get some, but I don't want them about particularly violent or graphic parts.
Yeah, when your kids start going through their Salinger phase, you just don't want them to be like, "Mom, I think you had some problems."
And I'd be like, "Well, you've gotten my intelligence, so get used to them." So,
congratulations, you're in for a decade of existential angst, and you inherited it from me.
The good news about that, though, is that most of my existential angst is resolved. So, once you figure out, who you are, what you believe, and why you believe it, and you've tested it out about 1.5 billion times, and the world will force you to do this, by the way, you can actually be this kind of steady person. I think that's why, like, when I tell people I love being a mom, because I've always felt like that was just my destiny to be a mom. And if mom is like this stable person that kind of like just exudes tension, but you can still trust it. Someone's like the rubber band around your life. And I think that's why, like, a lot of people do find me, like, maybe not sexually appealing. So thank God for that. I don't want to deal with that. But at least appealing in the manner that's like, oh, you have your life somewhat together and things are okay. And I'm like, yeah, mostly.
Would you be considered a millennial then? Or
I don't self-identify as a millennial. So.
For obvious reasons, but...
I mean,
I was saying, if you are in that age bracket, you're like the most put together millennial, like emotional wise, I know at the moment. So.
Oh, okay. Well, you need more friends, but.
They're all a mess. It's all terrible. It's a whole generation.
We're all kind of a mess in different ways. I'm like, the thing with, I would actually say, like, I'm almost like a bridger to the millennial and the millennial conservatives. I think because, like, when somebody tweets something that's just like strange to like the adults in the room, I actually understand where they're coming from. Like, I saw that article that somebody wrote about how their like $4 latte is their one bad excuse for like keeping their finances straight. It's kind of the thing that's like putting them in their financial straits. It's like, I get that though. I get that because, they're just staples. Like, when I get really, really upset, the first thing I want to do is I want to go out and get coffee, or I want to go out and get, it's an emotional sort of stabilizing default that you have as a human. Like in a lot of millennials, because we grew up in that era of, like, some of us grew up in that area of like, oh, it's time for dinner, let's go out and get food, My mom never really cooked a whole lot for us because she had a full-time job and my dad had a full-time job, and like now that I'm at home and I'm like, let's go out to eat. So I mean, I get that.
It reminds me of that senator who did the avocado toast thing. Did you remember? These millennials are running out of money because they spend all their money on avocado toast.
Well, avocados, I actually make fun of avocados because I'm like the only person in the world that doesn't seem to like them. I'm like, they're like vegetable version of applesauce. And it's like, I don't like applesauce either.
I'm just kind of full Barney at this point with it. Just put it in my veins! Which I'm ashamed of because it makes me feel like more of a millennial, and the more millennial I feel like, the more wrong it feels. I just have I have a 1,000-yard stare every time I realize I'm part of them.
Yeah, well, I mean, when it comes to conservatism, and I've talked about this too, and because I have a lot of friends that are more the conservative variety, and I say myself, I am a conservative Christian.
You're not supposed to admit that if you're going into Hollywood, remember?
Yeah, I know.
You're supposed to join the secret group.
I'm hoping that, they talk about likable conservatives being dangerous, and I'm hoping that I can use that as, like, living dangerously. I mean, as a mom, you have to be kind of safe about everything else, so it's like, this is my one outlet for it. If it makes me an outcast, I'm willing to pay the price for it.
I read primetime propaganda. Every second I was working in film, I had my mouth shut, so...
But, I mean, and that's kind of like the thing that people don't realize is, like, conservatism is conserving the good, but it's also, and it does change, it just changed really slowly. So it's like we do change over time more, and they're wrong to think that we can't change. I mean, everybody's capable of change, and I think that's the thing that, like, with the Starlight Chronicles I was talking about earlier, I have this really narcissistic, egotistical sort of protagonist who finds out he's a superhero. And it's this really, I really love the series because you can actually see his, being a hero means being selfless, and it's at odds with his personality, and you can actually see the growth and the change, and by the time it's book 7, it's this kind of full arc has come into fruition. And I think that's the biggest thing that I learned about writing that series in particular was that you got to love people where they're at, because they're not going to stay where they're at. And so I'm a conservative in my principles, but I'm liberal in my love. I can, I can love all sorts of, weird, wrong, disgusting people, because...
Like Faith Mo? No.
Never. Gosh.
I'm so mean. I'm sorry.
I'm going to tell her you said that.
I never met her. She doesn't care. I did get into a fight with Spencer Clavin the other day on Twitter, but...
Oh, yeah. Well, he will defend her, so you better watch out.
No, I was making fun of his dad, so...
Oh, okay, well... Really?
Fair game.
So, no, so you can like all these different people, and you can give them the grace to be like, well, it's cute that, you think that this is like this, but this is not really like this. And I mean, I feel this for my children all the time, too. It's like, oh, you think playing with fire is fun. No, it's not. My kids probably think my motto for myself is, you're making mommy nervous.
And then the Switch comes out, so...
They're good kids.
There are no good kids. There are little monsters, but... And I like kids, I'm just saying.
They're good monsters, then. And they won't always be like this. So, but it's my job to make sure that they come out better, of course. And I'm aiming for manageable at this point.
More manageable being the key important words there.
Well, I tell them all the time, and that's, I think, what people have forgotten a lot is it's okay if you're not it's okay if you're not friends with people, but you still have to get along, and that was like a revelation for me in high school or in college. It's like, oh, I don't have to like you, but I do have to get along with you for now, so I will. But if you want to be my friend, there's gonna be some absolution. Propitiation and stuff.
I think there are some people nowadays that need to hear that.
Yeah. Oh, well, I mean, and that's the thing is, I this past week, actually, I got called out because, I live in Georgia, and we have the heartbeat bill that just got passed.
Yay, Georgia!
Yes, I actually live close to a lot of the more movie areas too, so I live in kind of like this very purple area, so I have a lot of friends that are for it, a lot of friends that are against it, and I have to be able to say on both sides, what if this, what if that, and my author motto is actually walking the lines between overlapping worlds, and a lot of that rings true for politics too. I think it's important that you understand and empathize with other people, properly empathize with other people. I mean, like this disabled woman or disabled 11-year-old gets raped, pregnant. What are you going to do? Are you going to force her to have the kid? I don't think that's a really good empathy sort of example, because it's not the norm. That is kind of an exceptional case, and you don't govern by the exceptional cases. This is about a government's stance on a particular act. And we should, promote life and support life is always a very, that's a very pro-life thing that I'd like to see. So the heartbeat bill is, for me, pretty nice. I mean, there are exceptions, and health of the mother and the rape and the incest, and there are a lot of other ways around it, frankly. So, but also here, like, what I'd like to see next is I'd like to see a lot of red tape in their adoption and the foster care system kind of get pulled away. I have friends that are foster moms who would like to adopt, and there's just a lot of, like, there's a two-year minimum that for some of them, and there's some requirements for housing, and some of it is kind of some of it is kind of strict. Some of it is actually loosening up lately, and I'm happy to see that too. So when people talk about we don't love them past birth, it's not true. A lot of red tape is involved, and I know from a lot of my friends' experiences. I have two friends, actually. My one friend just adopted her second child out of China, and I have my other friend, she adopted her son out of Albania because it was just easier to go around the kind of like the system here.
Wow,
So.
it's easier to adopt an Albanian child than an American one. Wow.
Crazy, right?
Well, maybe I'm not surprised that Albania has weak adoption standards, but relatively speaking, but.
Well, I know in China, like the kids there, they have kind of an uphill battle with their. I mean, they've gotten some release lately with the 2-child policy now in China instead of the 1-child policy. But I know just from another friend that I had when I was growing up, she was looking into adopting, and they found like there were some girls in the orphanages in China that like they had a hair lip or they had an extra toe and they were there and that was it. And it's just it is kind of tragic. Some of the just in caseness red tape that we throw on stuff where and again it speaks to my conservatism that I'm an individualist. I think this is a case by case sort of thing, and there should be people that advise us best and they should know how to do it best, but also individually we should have some kind of more subjective, experiential, authentic sort of assessment process for it. So.
I mean, I don't know. I don't have much to say on the subject because I don't know much about it. But that's.
Oh, okay.
No, it's interesting. I just don't know anything about it. So.
Yeah, I used to be a teacher, and that's kind of how it's kind of like the difference between standardized tests versus portfolios. Portfolios are considered like authentic assessment because you're allowed to select the different objects that you throw in it, whereas a standardized test is like you go in, you sweat a lot, you write your answers down, and you pray to God that you're right.
Oh gosh. I started considering going back to college lately, and I just started getting like, ugh, going back to school.
Well, maybe you should read my other book, Should I Go to College?
Oh my lord, I was just sitting there the whole time.
Well, I actually wrote this book because when I graduated college, I have my bachelor's with teacher education and secondary English, and then I have my master's in English and creative writing. And as you can imagine, I had a lot of student loan debt. It is paid off, praise God. I did actually include Mary Rich in here for that. But the premise of this book is all the proceeds are actually going to help new grads who are struggling to pay off their student loans. And I'm trying to set up the 501c3. Another area where it's like, I'd really rather that there be less red tape with this. It's about $400 to apply for the 501c3 here. It's like, can't I just give money and get tax credit for it?
Well, I can attest to someone who went to college. Don't. I went to a tech school and I got a 2-year degree in audio engineering, and it was cool. And then I went to Chicago to try to find a job, but it turned out the entire market was a complete cesspool of. You had to do like 4 or 5 internships unpaid, and then then most of the students don't actually get in. And every single student that goes out of Columbia is your competition, so that the market's flooded. And I just got to the point where it's like, screw it, and I got a job at a warehouse. So.
Yeah. Well, I will say too that speaking about like being an author like me, is like they say one of the best groups that I've been in on Facebook for writing support is called 20 Books to 50K, and they talk about how pretty much the same thing I just talked about. Like, you want 20 books in like a specific genre or in like a niche audience, and that's supposed to, like, if you're consistently good and well received, you're supposed to earn about 50K a year. And I've seen plenty of people do this, so it's possible.
Writing 20 books is not a small deal, though.
No. No, I know a lot of people can just whip them out. I mean, like, some people look at me and they're like, you have 4 books out this year, and I'm like, what's wrong with you?
You don't work full time. That's other than parenting.
Yeah, parenting is its own kind of cesspool. But no, like I said, I have a lot of support here, and I'm pretty fast at writing. I mean, like, if you have a master's degree in English, you've spent a good at least 80 hours of your 30 some hours degree, writing research papers and stuff, and that kind of that logical progression of plot and character and like that analysis is second nature to you. So that's another reason why I enjoy talking with people, but sometimes I come off as very rambly, if you haven't noticed.
This is a very rambly, laid-back podcast. This is perfect for it. So.
Oh, perfect. The other thing is I don't get to interact with like a lot of adults that are actually interested in my work. When you go to Mommy and Me groups and you start talking about your latest dystopian novel. One of the producers that I pitched to was asking about other work, and they wanted to see some of my other work project synopses for film and TV and stuff. So I was like, well, I have this idea for a pilot. And it's basically kind of like a modern reboot of Major Dad. I loved that show growing up, and we don't have like any fun military shows that I can like really name right now, so I'm like, it's perfect fit for the market.
You're telling me Homeland isn't a laugh a minute?
Oh, it's it's hilarious.
Now I just want to see like that really inappropriate laugh, like someone just watching Homeland and just having really inappropriate laughing to it. They're going to bomb the White House. Ha 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 ha!
Well, I have a lot of family who, my husband's family has a lot of people in the military, and so they don't have a lot of like fun military shows anymore, like for families. Okay, for families.
Nowadays, that'd be a political statement.
Yeah. So, but the basic premise was like this liberal journalist falls in love with this conservative Marine, and I was like, what's going to bring these two together? I'm like, obviously right now the big ticket is Venezuela. So there's, so like the whole pilot operates around this thing where we have like a Navy ship down there, and we're intercepting doctor and medical missions to Venezuela, because that's the only thing that Cuba offers them, and that's like keeping them alive. And so I was like, yep, we're gonna just go to fall Cuba and Venezuela at the same time by capturing all their doctors. And this is the military mission, it's the secret military mission, and I'm like, this, and of course, like, you find out at the end, the big plot twist. There's a big plot twist, okay? But and it's this crazy kind of kooky thing that I think is real enough that kids could be like, oh, that's bad, and oh, that's good, and oh, they're getting together as they fight and argue and figure this thing out. And I was like, that's kind of like more like a, sort of thing that I'd like to see. Just, it's thoughtful, thought-provoking fun. Kids can still get it, it's appropriate, and it's just funny to think about those sort of things. So, like, it's just, I really like the idea of having more things that we can kind of poke fun at, like both left and right together. So I forget the original strand of this conversation. So this.
Yeah, I did too. So.
Yeah. And this is what I call my mom brain. Jeez. I forget, and I just get caught up in everything. Yeah, stories.
I just keep looking at myself in the little mirror in the tiny corner, and it's just me covering my face with the mug.
Well, I like doing that too. So. There you go.
I was gonna ask a couple paragraphs ago. You said you're from Georgia. Do you know about Seamus Coughlin?
No. Well, I'm a transplant technically. So.
I mean, Freedom Tunes, the Freedom Tunes guy.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah.
He's from Georgia too. I didn't know.
Oh, okay.
I was gonna say, he's like, you're probably close to him, but.
Well, I honestly like one of the best things that my parents did when I was a kid was we went to all 50 states, like all of them. And I loved that experience, and I still drive home every once in a while to go see them, and my sister lives across the country now, so I'll drive and go see her, and I really love America. It's so pretty, it's so big, and there's a lot of room for so much, I like to think of my political stuff that I do, like put into my work or falls into my work somehow. I like to think of it as kind of like a love letter to it. I like America a lot. So
yeah, I think we as a country would benefit a lot if more people drove across it still.
Yeah, they call it flyover country for good reason, but it's like, have you ever like been through? I mean, like there's this like in I want to say it's Gaffney. They have this giant peach, this giant peach thing, and it's got this like little thing, and like.
This is the real America, guys.
It's just like this giant bum. And it's got this little faucet right at the butt crack. I'm just like, pull it here.
That sounds like something that they would make in the boonies.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in Virginia, like just past Farmers Market, if you're going up 85, they have a similar one that's like this giant air balloon, and it's just like, yes, that's probably the better way to go with this sort of thing. And it's just like the different cities, and like going through Nashville and I'm sorry, Knoxville is the one I usually go up through when I go visit my mom, and just the just how different it is from Georgia. There's no Spaghetti Junction, and there's the aquarium, and they have like this disco ball like building. I mean, it's just it's incredible how people forget that we're dealing with people. We're dealing with people and places and groups of people and different cultures. So,
I mean, yeah, totally. It's so easy to just get into the mindset where everything in the country is just like the small corner you're in. And I live in Chicago, so everything in Chicago is like, it thinks it's that kind of coastal New York style, but then you drive an hour west and you're in corn for the next 2 days.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, with Illinois, it's very unscenic corn, so I had the unfortunate duty of doing a truck run for my work a middle of fall last year. I had to drive all the way to St. Louis and back in a day, and that is just the most unscenic trip I've ever been on.
Wow.
It's nothing but corn.
Oh.
I'm not even saying that like as a diss, because I know if you're gonna drive throughout the country, you're gonna see a lot of it. But like, I've driven out to the Black Hills, and there's a lot of it gets really pretty after a while. Like,
yeah, Kansas is really green. And I mean, not at harvest season, but I mean, like, really, really green.
I haven't been to Kansas yet. I mean, I unfortunately I haven't had the luxury of visiting all 50 states yet, but.
Yeah, well, I mean, definitely put it on your like bucket list or whatever. It is like they talk about like the hero's journey in literature. This is more of like a character journey, like an internal sort of thing, I think.
I mean, if I'm going anywhere on my next trip, the next book I've told you a little about the book I'm trying to write right now that's coming along slowly, but the next book I want to write after that, I want to do a collection of interviews with living war veterans. And the thought, yeah, and the thought I wanted to do was, if I do that, I want to take a trip to Normandy and like try to see some of the actual places in Europe where a lot of the war fighting happened.
Yeah.
So if I'm going anywhere, I'm going to take a very expensive trip to France, but I don't even like France all that much. I just want to see what the invasion beach was like. It's like, this beach right here, this is America now.
I've never been to Normandy in France, but I went to Paris one summer with my family. It was about 2003 for context, and when Notre Dame burned earlier this year, I was crying, so I was depressed.
Yeah, I'm not even Catholic, but I was watching that with just shock. So
yeah. I mean, like, my kids were like, "Mommy, what's wrong?" And just like, I just had to sit there and stare at them, and I'm like,
I can't explain.
My mom really likes it's burning.
It's hard to explain to a child.
Yeah, and they'll get it one day. When I was little, like, I used to like read any book that I really wanted, so I read a lot of terrible books, obviously. Probably your raunchy grandmother friend and stuff, and I have some in common. But I also watched a lot of bad movies, and One of my still guilty pleasures is America's Sweethearts, and there's this line in it that Catherine Zeta-Jones says. It's like, did I brush my teeth this morning?
C.S. Johnson, prude extraordinaire.
Yeah, well, I mean, like, prude in principle, but I'll talk about anything. So it's but she's like, did I brush my teeth this morning? And like as a kid, I thought that was like, oh, that's funny. So I'm like, oh my god, it's funny. So yeah, growing up changes you.
That it does.
Yeah. So the other thing Faith and I talk about with Disney March Madness every year is how every year I feel like I identify more with the villains of the people. Yeah, so
it's like the Squidward thing where all the millennials are just like, I grew up into Squidward. What happened to me?
Oh, you're like the audio tech version of Squidward.
Lovely. I have my old MacBook that barely functions anymore, so it's okay, Mr. MacBook.
Oh, I love that. You should get one of those face swap things.
Oh gosh. I have to draw the line somewhere at not being a millennial purposefully, so.
Oh, we can be one ironically.
I'm only sort of hipster, not all the way.
The only thing hippie about me are my actual hips. So.
I said hipster, not hippie.
Oh, okay. Well,
I'm not a particularly good straight-laced conservative, but I like to pretend I am. I walk into Hot Topic and I walk out feeling like John Wayne, man.
There you go. Well, that's actually one of the things that I do actually still talk about. Second pitch, I got to do the Ben Shapiro thing here. So good writing is like good sex. I actually talk about how...
Get him to say those words.
Yeah. Yeah.
Good writing is like good sex.
Oh, well.
We need to get Freedom Tunes to say that.
Oh, yeah. Actually, that's what I was going to say. That's what got me thinking about Ben Shapiro. I saw that Ben Shapiro's family does Thanksgiving thing. I must have watched it 20 or 40 times.
His wife's a doctor. His wife's a doctor, folks.
Socialism works. If it did, frankly, a lot more people would have an easier time eating their cats.
Oof.
But, yeah.
I wanted to ask, how do you know Faith more? I've seen you talk to her a lot. Like, how'd you meet her?
I met her over Twitter, actually. Twitter and Facebook. I subscribed to the Daily Wire in 2016 because I really liked Andrew Klavan's satirical take on things. I really like dry, kind of deadpan humor. Like I tell people there are like 9 types of humor, and I'm only happy if you give me all 10. And it's that kind of drawing, like the absurdist sort of satirical bent of things. So I ended up subscribing so I could get his memoir for free. I like hardcovers, but I don't like spending $35 on them. So there's my millennialism kicking in somewhat.
Spend $100 to get a $30 book for free.
Yeah. Spend $93 million on a Green New Deal, and you don't have to pay for college.
It's getting political in here, folks. I'm starting to sweat.
Right. It's the same principle. So it's easy to see how you're susceptible to it. I am typically, my own worst enemy. And so that's, so I subscribed to his podcast and I started watching the full thing and got the mailbag. And he mentioned Faith a few times with her articles on PJ Media and the Wall Street Journal one, that, and a couple of them. And he mentioned that she had a Facebook page for Disney princesses, and I was like, oh, that's so cute. I feel kind of bad because I didn't actually realize that she's like close to my age. I was like, oh, Spencer is a little bit younger than me, so I was like, oh, maybe she's the younger sibling. And nope. So, but we both really enjoy Disney movies, and I'm re-enjoying them again all over with my kids and stuff. So we just started chatting on Twitter, and it was just really fun to do Disney March Madness. That was I think, it was 2 years ago. I was like, let's just, I don't care about sports, so you could sweat some more there, And it's like, instead of March Madness, let's do Disney March Madness and just watch a bunch of Disney shows and decide which one is better. Which one is the best one. And she was all for this, and I was like so excited, because I was like, oh, I was like half joking, but yay, let's do it. So we got the bracket set up, and we just became really good friends from that. And I actually went to New York City last year and met her in person, so we know each other like for like reals and IRL, as the kids say. And we're, you know, we both have kids, and we both share a lot of the same values. And you know, her warmth and her friendliness and her genuine likability serve as a good contrast to my more like thoughtful, sort of odd, half snobbery sort of take. So like she's Rob Lowe and I'm Adam Scott from Parks and Rec, where I'm literally so excited, and it's like, but we're gonna do this anyway. So, yep, that's my friendship. Woohoo.
That's cool. I mean, she's a sort of famous person, so it's cool to know someone like that.
Yeah, she's really great. She deserves it. I have even like the people that are kind of like rude to her on Twitter, she's always so nice to them. And like the people who were mean to me like last week, I'm like, I need to pray for you, but I'm not going to tell you that, because you're just going to think that I'm being mean about it. But I'm not really being mean about it, but I am being sort of mean about it, because I'm angry at you right now. Yep. Oh, who are your friends? Oh, I saw that you retweeted a bunch of stuff from Christian too, from Hollywood and Toto.
I've talked to Toto a couple times. I reached out to him randomly about a year and a half ago, asking him about like just career advice, and he was actually kind enough to take a call. And since then, he's just been retweeting all my stuff, and he got me my gig at Legal Insurrection. So,
yay! Oh, I love Christian. He's so great. He's so nice. So
yeah, one of my weird realizations the past year and a half of my life is that there are a surprising number of famous people that will take your calls if you offer the most minimal look of presentability. So I've talked to Kyle Mann, who's the editor at Babylon Bee. I interviewed him for Geeks Under Grace. I've interviewed a few pretty interesting film critics in the past year. I interviewed the Mads, who were the villains on Mystery Science Theater 3000. I don't know if I've met anyone else since then. I guess you'd technically count, but as I say,
I'm getting lumped in with everybody that I kind of know off Twitter.
My advice to people: write for a very minimally respected film site, or get a public access TV license and flaunt it, because people will start taking you seriously for no reason. So,
I always tell people, like, if you look like you know what you're doing, typically nobody will stop you.
Yeah, that's the great secret of life, is just look like you're supposed to be there.
Yeah, like I kind of want to do con, like conservative con. Just have all these people on Twitter that I hang out with that I think are really cool.
All it's gonna take is Right Wing Watch to show up with a camera, and you're just gonna destroy like 50 people's lives. I have infiltrated Charlottesville 3.0.
Oh well, I know that. I don't know why the Nazi thing gets attached to the right, because I mean, European right stuff is still kind of left here. But
that's a minefield.
Yeah.
Listen to this disturbing audio recording from a conference at Charlottesville 3. Max don't care about your feelings, folks.
You know, if you could reframe that like Orson Welles show, you could probably make it.
And what?
Like do an Orson Welles thing with it. And then they came for me, Charlottesville 2.0 radio show, infiltrating the.
I'm gonna tweet a video at you after this. It's really funny, but. And anyone who cares to find out what it is can just look on my Twitter timeline and find it. But
I will do my best to make an effort to look at the video. Oh, well, my original point, though, with my original advertisement is that everybody is conservative about something and everybody's liberal about something. And it's just kind of like regular politics is just this big sort of thing, figuring out where the universal meets the personal. And, I mean, because I've known a lot of people that are really rich with love, but not with their money. And then I've known the opposite to that. And this is fun. It's, politics is fun just because you get people, they engage their values on a personal versus universal level. I think that's really fun. That's why I'm a writer. I get excited about Google.
Right.
I mean, yep, I know. But there are so many other things that people get excited about. I know my friend Jake, he does movie reviews, and I see you've got, is that Infinity War behind you? Or
I've got, let me see, I've got Guardians right behind me. I got Doom right here, and then I have a Woody Allen poster right here. So, and then, and up there I have a 2001 poster. So,
yeah, my friend Jake does a lot of reviews. I read your reviews and I read his reviews of the same movie, and I think you guys.
Yay! I have a fan.
Well, sure you do.
I don't know who reads it. No one tweets me.
Oh well, honestly, I get that. I should be better about that. I have. Like sometimes randomly people will like email me and they're like, I really love your books. And I'm like, oh, did you actually read them?
That's a shame.
So I have to be better about that with people's stuff. No, I like so my friend Jake, Jacob Berry, he does Studio Jake. I've done a few articles for him, and I typically read his stuff and then I read your stuff, and I like how you guys kind of clash at certain points. It's fun.
You'll have to send me his stuff, because I don't know. I'm curious as to how we clash,
okay.
But...
Yeah, well, I think on Endgame you guys were pretty much in line. You guys all kind of agreed that it was like this sort of like contracts ended sort of goodbye.
Contractually mandated goodbye.
Yeah. So yeah. And then the other person I really like for movie reviews, besides Christian, is John Nolte over at Breitbart. I think his articles are the only ones I read off of Breitbart, but I like his movie reviews best. So.
I have this funny thing where I am generally of the right more so, but almost every single film critic I watch and read regularly is like a far leftist. So it's this weird contradiction for me. Because I'm like,
good for that though,
I love that like long form New Yorker style film criticism where they just go super in depth into a topic, and all the people I know who write like that are of that persuasion. So it's not like they're. I guess part of what I try to do with my writing is to try to create a version of that, just from my own perspective. But unfortunately, my wonderful editor at Legal Insurrection will only give me a 700-word count. So.
Thanks. Oh well, see, like my like with my MA in English, I like literary criticism. I like the in-depth stuff, but I also, I like getting different points of view. So I actually appreciate, like you said, you're taking some of that and putting it in there. I like that a lot. So I'm a big critic nerd.
I mean, one of the critics I interviewed for I did a miniature documentary last year. About a movie that was getting released on Netflix, and one of the guys I interviewed was a very famous critic from the Chicago Reader, and I saw him again this couple weeks ago when he was introducing the film at a theater downtown Chicago, and he went on a long diatribe about politics in the middle of his film criticism, and I'm like, okay, whatever, but everything else about it was brilliant, so...
Yeah, kind of like my conversation with you today. Of course, obviously. So.
I don't know if that's a compliment or not.
It's okay.
All right.
Well, I do actually have to go. I
was about to say we hit the hour mark a minute ago, but
the pitter patter of tiny feet are coming from mommy. So.
All right. Do you want to give your book a quick plug, or?
Yeah. So, good writing is like good sex. Sort of sexy thoughts on writing. I think it'll be good for the soul, and for your. I don't know if it'll be good for your sex life or not, to be honest. You never know. So buy it and just try it out and then see. And then I have a ton of other books. You can find me csjohnson.me, M-E. And then you can find me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I'm sure Tyler will be kind enough to post the links to all my stuff if you're really fascinated.
Send me, message me anything specific you want linked, because I'll probably forget it. But
yeah, yeah. I set up all my social media in the age where it was cool to do something different. So I have different, the URLs for everything. So.
All right, I'll let you go take care of the little rascal. So.
All right. Well, thank you for having me. I really enjoyed this. I hope you did too.
I did too. Thank you.
Yay.
All right. Bye, everyone.
All right. Bye.